What if I told you that Ferrari was not prepared for what Lewis Hamilton did in his first big test in Barcelona? What does this mean for the Scuderia and the rest of the grid in 2026? Subscribe to continue uploading more of this type of content now, if we continue. From the first day of testing, Maranello engineers began to receive data that simply did not match their expectations because everything was working better than expected. Every lap that Lewis Hamilton completed, every long run, every configuration change, he returned figures that almost coincided to the millimeter with the digital models they had built for months. The lateral loads, the drag levels, the aero balance at high speed, the wear rates of the Pirelli compounds, everything was beginning to align. It was the first time in a long time that Ferrari not only had a fast car, but a predictable car. And this generated internal confusion, but a positive one. The surprise came not from a sudden improvement, but from an unexpected validation. Those responsible for the technical area, simulation analysts, and track engineers began to speak in a different way. There was security in the technical meetings. There was less talk about problems and more about opportunities. Instead of "this doesn't fit with what we saw in Maranello," the comments were "this confirms what we wanted to try." That difference, subtle for those who are not within the technical ecosystem, changes everything. Because it means that the car can be developed with confidence. That every new spoiler, every floor update, every revision of the cooling flows will have a much higher success rate. It would no longer be a matter of trial and error. You could evolve with purpose. But beyond the cold data, what caught the eye was the speed with which Hamilton extracted performance. Drivers typically need time to adapt to a new environment, especially when it comes to something as complex as an F1 car under new technical regulations. Hamilton, on the other hand, seemed to merge with SF26 from the first significant run. Vasseur was watching him closely, as were the technicians responsible for the power unit. And in each round of feedback, the British driver offered precise, nuanced comments, anticipating what the car would do in certain conditions before it even happened. One of the most revealing moments was during the second day of testing, when the rain turned the circuit into a minefield. While many teams chose to put their cars away, Ferrari decided to keep spinning. Hamilton, under heavy rain conditions, completed more than 50 laps on intermediate and extreme rain tires. What could have been a survival session turned into a technical goldmine. The Briton activated energy recovery modes that had not yet been tested on the track, and he did so without compromising the stability of the car. The behavior of the hybrid system was impeccable. Traction in slow corners was still solid. The rigidity of the chassis, one of the points of greatest concern after the previous year's design, proved to be stable even under the variable loads of a wet circuit. For technicians, these types of extreme conditions are key. A car can hide weaknesses in ideal conditions. But when everything gets complicated, rain, low temperatures, dirty track, that's when its soul is truly revealed. And the SF26 not only survived that test, but passed it with flying colors. Hamilton, getting out of the car, commented that it was one of the most communicative cars he had driven in the rain in the last 5 years. A compliment like that, coming from someone who has driven masterpieces like the Mercedes W11, does not go unnoticed. Internally, Ferrari began to wonder if they had underestimated the potential of the package. The question in the air was no longer, do we have a competitive car, but how quickly can we take it to the next level? The silent revolution had begun. And for the first time in a long time, Ferrari was not talking about hope. He was talking about facts. When Lewis Hamilton set that 1 minute and 16.348 seconds at the end of the testing week in Barcelona, the entire paddock was silent for a few seconds. It wasn't just the best time of the preseason. It was a declaration of intent, a warning. One that took by surprise even the teams that consider themselves leaders in data analysis and external simulations. The most striking thing was not that Hamilton was fast, but when and how he decided to be fast. Ferrari chose to launch that lap when the others were already lowering the blinds, with the track in optimal conditions, with low fuel and soft tires. It was a surgical, planned, almost theatrical move. And it worked. Because beyond the stopwatches, he sent a psychological message that deeply impacted his rivals. Red Bull was one of the first teams to react. Although Max Verstappen did not participate in that day, his closest entourage immediately began to review available telemetry, external videos, runway edge analysis, and visual behavior of the SF26. What they found was disturbing. Not only was Hamilton fast, but the car seemed stable, planted, with no visible signs of extreme oversteer or understeer. Its passage through slow corners was clean, with excellent traction on exit. In the fast sections, the car showed aerodynamic flexibility that allowed it to attack the curves without losing balance. It was, in short, a car that seemed to have it all, and that generated alarm. At Mercedes, for its part, the blow was more emotional. George Russell had been the fastest the previous day, and his time was beaten by just 97 thousandths. But what was truly significant was that Hamilton, in just 1 week with Ferrari, had questioned the hierarchy they thought they would have. It was a direct warning from someone who knows their structure from within and now runs with rival colors. Brackley's engineers knew Hamilton didn't have the most polished car yet, but his ability to maximize it so early was a reminder of why he is still considered one of the greatest of all time. However, it wasn't all praise and panic. Some in the paddock, especially independent analysts and certain members of McLaren, decided to take Ferrari's times with a grain of salt. Sky Sports journalist Craig Slater reported that several teams rated the SF26 as a handful, an expression that in technical jargon can mean that the car is fast but difficult to control. This statement made sense if certain moments of the car were analyzed in the long run, where Leclerc showed a little more instability in medium traction and Hamilton actively corrected with the steering wheel in high lateral load corners. For these observers, Ferrari had chosen to show all its potential in a punctual lap, but they were still far from having a car that was consistent in the race stint or easy to handle in different track conditions. Former Aston Martin strategist Bernie Collins offered a more balanced view. She stressed that the simple fact that Hamilton spoke optimistically was in itself an important sign. The previous year, the Briton spent much of the championship conveying frustration and resignation, even when the Mercedes car behaved acceptably. Seeing him now smiling, involved, communicative, was a change in tone that indicated that there was something real behind his enthusiasm. And Collins, who has lived inside the pits, knows that this attitude is not manufactured. McLaren, meanwhile, was playing his own psychological game. They had not focused on fast lap times during the week, which could be interpreted as a distraction strategy. In fact, its long run suggested an extremely solid car in race pace, although less striking in individual laps. Some engineers speculated that McLaren's true potential would be seen only when the championship officially began. Ferrari then found itself in a strange position, with a car that seemed to have surprised everyone, but with no guarantee that that brilliance would withstand the weight of a full season. And that is where the doubt that persists throughout the paddock comes in. Was that performance real? Or simply an ideal combination of track conditions, low fuel load, freed engine map, and pure Hamilton talent? Until the SF26 proves in race conditions, with real strategies and under points pressure, that it can maintain that level, many will continue to wait cautiously. The recent past is full of cars that shined in winter and fell apart in spring. But what is undeniable is that Ferrari achieved what seemed impossible weeks ago, to be on everyone's lips again, and to do so not because of scandals or mistakes, but because of performance. And that type of conversation, although it still does not guarantee titles, completely changes the climate in Maranello. Because now everyone looks at the prancing horse with respect, and also with a good dose of fear. Lewis Hamilton has not yet won a race with Ferrari. He has also not been on the podium, nor has he competed in a single real Grand Prix lap at the front of the peloton with the SF26. But what happened in Barcelona was more than just a quick lap. It was a coded message that everyone understood in their own way. It was the first concrete sign that this project, an unlikely alliance between the most successful driver of the modern era and the most iconic team in history, may have more solid foundations than many dared to imagine. Because what was experienced during those days of trials was the first glimpse of a narrative that is just beginning to be built. Hamilton, with more than 300 Grand Prix wins under his belt, does not need validation, but it does need results. In 2025, the silence that reigned in his box after each classification, after each inglorious race, spoke louder than any interview. And Ferrari, a team that has experienced the highest glories and most humiliating failures, needed not only speed, but leadership, structure, and above all, credibility. In Barcelona, both found in each other what they needed. But let's not fool ourselves. This is not an automatic redemption story. The season will be long, and the challenges are just beginning. Red Bull has not said its last word. McLaren, with a technical structure at its highest point since the 1990s, is in a position to dominate. Mercedes has made it clear that its reorganization is bearing fruit. Ferrari, for now, has only put its flag on the table. But he has done it with a forcefulness that changes the tone of the entire preseason conversation. Therefore, beyond the chronometers and timetables, the question is another. Will this be the true rebirth of the prancing horse? Is Lewis Hamilton the man who will return Ferrari to the top after more than a decade of frustrations? Or are we simply facing another technical mirage that will dissolve under the pressure of the championship? That is the story that begins to be written. And you who are watching this are part of it. What do you think? Do you think this new Ferrari has what it takes to be a champion? Do you see Hamilton winning with red on the highest podium in Monaco, Monza, Abu Dhabi? Subscribe to continue uploading more of that content. Now you really think about all this.